Welcome to another episode of the Distributed Data Show, brought to you by DataStax Academy, where we bring you the latest news and interview technical experts to help you succeed at building large-scale distributed systems.
Hey, I'm hanging out in our nation's capital. Well, maybe not your nation's capital, but my nation's capital, Washington, D.C., with Max Melnick from Deloitte. We're actually hanging out here at DataStax Developer Day. So we've been on tour, taking this show around the country, helping people get educated on Apache Cassandra and DataStax Enterprise. And Max was kind enough to join us for our keynote this morning. And I want to have more use case conversations. And we get these, we get input, we get reader mail or viewer mail that's like, we want to hear about use cases. So I want to give the people what they want. Do you want to help me give the people what they want?
Let's do it.
Okay, that's good. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Who is Max?
Yeah, so a little bit about me. I am currently engineering lead for one of the analytic product development teams that we have at Deloitte. I grew up in the DC area. Yeah. I then went to school at UVA, studied systems engineering, and then from there went and joined Deloitte. And in those 9 years that I've been there, I've worn a lot of different hats. I've done the traditional consulting roles and then also been more on the technical side, whether it be more of an ops position, a data scientist, software engineer, and now technical lead. I've also committed to TensorFlow, and so my passion is building analytic capabilities and solutions for clients. And so I identify more with the software developer side.
Cool. Yeah, we were joking before that, people think that if you work for Deloitte, you must be an accountant, and not so.
No. Everyone asks that first when you say you work at Deloitte, but that is not the part of Deloitte that I work for. Right. I don't know I don't have a CPA. A part of Deloitte that I'm part of is within our technology consulting practice, specifically within analytics, part of the product development team.
Cool. Okay, so analytics is your jam, and I like that combination of being able to do some consulting. You get out and see customers, you see what they need, and then you're also at work on a product. So I know that you work on a product called Mission Graph, which is kind of an analytics platform that we're going to get into, but what is the problem that you were trying to solve with Mission Graph?
Yeah, so the use case at a high level is how does an analyst, whether it be a mission or business analyst, identify high-risk entities or actors in a network? So what are some examples of that?
Wait, so we're finding bad guys. That's what we're doing here.
Yeah, finding bad guys.
Okay.
So some examples of that in the financial space, it could be identifying fraudulent transactions or fraud rings.
Yep.
In the national security space, it could be identifying terrorists. In supply chain, it could be identifying high-risk suppliers.
Okay. Oh, see, that's not one we think about. I know we've had some recent news about illicit either chips or firmware, depending on whose reports that you believe, kind of making their way into the supply chain and product of a lot of devices that we use all the time. So this is a top of mind thing right now.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what did you guys put together to kind of help solve this problem? You're basically like trying to shorten the time frame to insights in order to be able to find and detect bad actors, right?
Yeah.
From mountains of data.
The way I like to characterize the problem with that use case is around the data and then the operational challenges.
Okay.
And so from a data perspective, there's the usual analysts have to deal with massive quantities of data that is coming through at very high frequency. But then there's also some of the more data modeling challenges and data integration challenges around, okay, if I'm an analyst trying to create a full network to analyze, how do I connect all these different types of data across different data sets?
Okay.
And that also includes specifically things that are not connecting things that are not strongly keyed. So how do I know if I'm looking at airline data that one plane ticket for Max Melnick is the same as Max J. Melnick in another airline system. And so how do I connect those or resolve those two entities to create one Max Melnick entity for the analyst?
Yeah, right. Okay, so and we've had discussions on this show before about entity resolution problems and why graph databases are especially well equipped, rather than maybe in a classic sense like writing a massive join statement that would go and figure some of these things out. So am I on the right track? Is that the direction that you guys headed down? Graph?
Absolutely, yeah. And so as far as some of those problems inspired us to create a product called Mission Graph.
Yeah.
And at the core, it's about a self-service platform for analysts to create a real comprehensive network that combines lots of different data from lots of different domains so that they can do analysis, like I was talking about before, around identifying bad actors in the network.
Okay. And yeah, kind of real fast, like what does that usage pattern look like for an analyst that's sitting in front of the tool? What can they do?
Yeah, a lot of it's around interactive network exploration and analysis. So some of the key core questions that we enable analysts to answer are, one, tell me everything about this entity. It be a person so that they can see, okay, is there any kind of risky information that they have? But also more powerfully, and getting kind of to the graph side of things, what bad actors might this entity be related to? And so that's part of the solution that we help analysts. And so that's, and other pieces of that are also more on the graph analysis side around how are these two entities, whether it's organizations or people, related.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like a graph shortest path problem.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so it sounds like what you mentioned there is a little bit of a search problem, just locating entities in this treasure trove of data that we have, and then a graph problem of navigating relationships between them. I love the visual that you kind of showed in your talk this morning, where there was a particular entity of interest that you zeroed in on, you searched for it, you found it in the graph, and then began kind of traversing relationships, and the visualization was such that we could very clearly see like 3 suspicious entities that were 2 hops away from that node, which made us kind of like, oh, we should dig in and really investigate. I can imagine an analyst saying, okay, this is something I need to pay attention to.
Yeah, right now they spend so much time with the data collection, accessing the data, integrating the data. We want them to spend more time with the analysis so that they can identify bad guys, and whether, if you're law enforcement, for example, put people in jail.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're not going to go through your whole technology stack here. I know that, like, some people are like, hey, let me show you pictures of my kids that I've got here on my phone. I feel like architects are like, here, do you want to see my technology stack? This is what I'm using. We love to trade stories. So I know that you built a solution that's on Cassandra at the core, using DataStax Search and Graph. What is some advice that you have, like lessons learned, that you would share with people that are adopting this technology? Give me a couple things.
So the first lesson learned that I like to remind people about is know the data stacks in Cassandra, anti-patterns and best practices. That goes for really any tool that you're using. So one example, at one implementation, we ended up having the infrastructure team provision the servers on network-backed storage.
Oh, wait a minute.
And
okay.
As we all know, that is one of the big anti-patterns for running Cassandra on some kind of SAN. And
no SANs, people. No SANs.
Yeah, it created a lot of heartburn for the ops team and the developers who are trying to get these massive data loads integrated into our application.
Right.
So
you can see why it would be attractive, but there's some caveats there.
Yeah, and I love the documentation on the DataStax site that has explicitly or some of the anti-patterns and best practices and how to make your platform production ready. So definitely recommend people going and looking at those. Even if you've been running DataStax for a while, it probably pays to revisit them.
Do a health check.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's a good one. What else you got?
The next thing, as far as onboarding new team members, this is something we deal with a lot as we've been growing, and that is start simple relative to that team member's experience level. And so for example, with junior practitioners, a lot of times if we say, okay, go into the actual application code, whether it's the data pipeline code, and start modifying it, it can get very overwhelming. And so what I like to do is start a little bit more simple. And for example, I know a lot of the DataStax Academy videos, they have this reference application killer video that's a little bit more simple and easier to wrap your head around. So starting with things that are a little bit more simple and straightforward to help people ramp up is one thing that I recommend.
Okay, good. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I definitely, I'm sympathetic because I've thrown myself into situations and thrown other people into situations where you're trying to learn new technology, and it's not just one new technology learning curve. It's like, hey, can you go use this distributed database? And by the way, you also need to learn how to deploy it in the cloud. And here's the CLI for the cloud, for our cloud that we're using. And your head begins to explode. So that's good measured advice about how to just kind of take your time, find some resources that can really work you through it. All right, well, keep them coming. You have more? You have more of these?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So one thing more specific to Graph is I recommend, if you're trying to load or modify lots of data in DSE Graph, to use the DSE GraphFrames library that is built into DSE Spark.
Okay.
And we had a lot of challenges originally. Were programming, trying to load a bunch of data into Graph using some of the lower level Spark APIs like RDDs, and trying to use the DSE Java driver to load massive amounts of data using parameterized gremlin statements, which was very performant, but it was very difficult to understand from a developer's perspective. Right. It was very fragile. It was hard to debug. And then DSE GraphFrames came out, and it made developers' lives a lot easier and code a lot cleaner. And also, some of the other benefits that you get out of that are it integrates nicely with the higher level Spark APIs. And then also, you can easily take any data that you've persisted in DSE Graph and export it to a Spark GraphFrame and start doing some of the more awesome analytics that you can do out of the Spark GraphFrames library, like running PageRank on your data in Graph.
Oh, I love that.
Doing some of the community detection algorithms that they have, doing motif finding. So real powerful graph analytics very quickly.
Right, that's cool. I mean, like the tools in this area are getting more powerful all the time, and Spark APIs are changing and maturing. We're responding to that in DataStax Enterprise with what we're doing with that, and continuing to kind of push the envelope in this area. So I think it's good maybe to come back every once in a while and just really look and see what's available and how the APIs are changing. And there may be you can get rid of some lines of code. It's a good day for me as a developer when my net lines of code production is negative.
Yes.
This is a good day.
I like to simplify things, clean things up.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us, Max. This has been a really great episode, and I love having people to talk on about use cases. I'm so glad that you came and did a keynote for us at Developer Day. That was amazing. And we're actually going to share out the footage of that keynote kind of alongside. We'll release it alongside with this episode. So look for that. And to everyone out there, we're trying to get to you with our Developer Days. We're trying to get one in a city near you. I hear you, Denver. I hear you, Seattle. It's coming your way. And maybe this could be you sitting here talking to me for a Distributed Data Show episode where we talk about your use case. We would love that. We would love to have you on the show and hear more about how people are using Cassandra and DataStax Enterprise. So until next time, thank you.
Thank you for joining us again for the Distributed Data Show. We love your feedback, so go to the Distributed Data Show page on DataStax Academy and tell us what you think. You can also find us on the DataStax Academy YouTube channel, or find our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get great podcasts. While you're there, make sure and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode.